Hi everyone, welcome back to Diary of Miriam B, a guide to all things PhD, lifestyle and productivity. And I'm Courtney, and today here with me is Dr. Dalano R DaSouza, one of my friends from university. Dalano is a recent 1.5 years or so PhD graduate from the University of the West Indies. And I just thought I'd bring him here to give us some tips on how to overcome the different barriers that you are going to face in your PhD, given that he's now on the other side, made it out of the tunnel. And Dalano, I'll let you introduce yourself a bit.
Sure, well, I'm Dalano, like you mentioned, Dalano R DaSouza of Vincentian. Like you said, I just, last year and a half, completed my PhD in Economic Development Policy at the University of the West Indies, Cavite campus. Started in 2013. I finished last year, so you can see it was about 5-6 years. So that was a long tunnel. It was a very long tunnel that I finally made it out to the other end. You know, I'm happy to have completed. I think at some point in time, like most of us, I didn't know if I would. You know, we have those thoughts about ending the journey prematurely and say, well, what is it? You know, this isn't for me. I'm gonna bow out gracefully. But I mean, I persevered, and I hope that all of you guys listening and following, you're gonna persevere as well and get to the other end. And new things.
See, you made it out. Very few gray hairs.
I have some, but not too much.
So let's hope for some of us. I just wanted to ask, what was one of the biggest struggles that you faced during your PhD?
I would say perhaps imposter syndrome. I think that was one of the big ones. I mean, when you're in there and you're kind of not sure if you're cut out for this. Maybe you're not the right fit. Maybe it's not something. Maybe you've reached too high on this occasion, but I think that was perhaps it, and then of course the support, finding that balance, and that was for me the most difficult part of it.
When you say support, you mean support from your academic advisor?
Yeah, I mean support from the university structure and my academic advisor as a whole. As you know, UWI isn't as well resourced as perhaps the UK and international universities, so we have some unique challenges in a resource, I wouldn't say poor, but in a resource constrained environment that UWI is, and particularly because of what I wanted to study, it's always difficult. So that's one aspect of it, but also looking from what you're researching, because I was researching a topic that data isn't necessarily available. It's something that's not being studied in that way in the Caribbean. So you could say, okay, well, I have tons and tons of research material in this particular context, so that was difficult as well. Because I mean, of course, part of the challenge is you're supposed to, when you come into the PhD program, you have a mindset where you're expected, at least in your mind, to create this body of new knowledge. You're supposed to plug a gap. You're supposed to fill something in the literature, and that in itself is pressure. But it also makes you question a lot of things as you go through the process, because you're like, well, is this new? I mean, and you feel like you can't. You feel like you have to almost reinvent the wheel.
Always having to you know that picture with the self-study, the city, the PhD, just having to come. Like, it's tough. But can we go to imposter syndrome? I feel like we have this all the time, and I don't know if it's still something that follows you now in the workforce, because as a PhD student, I was like, okay, people expect this from me. Can I actually do this? How do you overcome that, and maybe how do you stop that from limiting you in your performance?
In terms of overcoming, in my mind, I haven't fully gotten over imposter syndrome. It's something that kind of happens every now and then. Even though at work, they will come to you and they'll be like, well, you're the PhD grad, and they throw a problem at you, and they're like, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, we expect that you can perhaps give us some ideas on how to fix it. And then you're kind of like, me? Me? And they're almost kind of like, at one point in time, you're supposed to be the smartest person in the room, and I'm just like, but it doesn't go away. But for me, I've always said, and I think it comes down to how I was raised too. My mom always said, listen, if they can do it, you can do it now.
That's true.
That's something that I've always kind of gone back to whenever I'm in an issue, I'm having a problem, I'm stuck, and I'm just like, can I really do this? And I'm feeling like an imposter in the environment. I read something and I'm like, but I can do it. I can do it too now. And like, for me, it has come from years and years of kind of finding a way to get something done. It becomes easier to kind of push the imposter syndrome away when you have a track record or a history of getting things done. So for example, when I was in undergrad, I used to be wondering, why when we have an exam, you have a test and so on, and then as you keep passing them and you keep passing them, you write the paper and you're like, is this any good? But then other people read it and then they're like, this is really good work. Then over time you kind of get the mentality that, listen, you kind of get the mentality that, listen, it might not seem like a lot to me, but when you kind of subject it to outside scrutiny, over time you kind of realize that your work and your intellect kind of passes that test over and over, and then you kind of get to the point that, you know, I can do it. You know?
Do you think our imposter syndrome is linked to perfectionism in a sense?
I mean, the search for perfection is something that I think we all grapple with, especially when you're in a PhD program, and especially if you're reading material as you do when you're researching. You're reading these materials and they seem so good, they seem so well thought out, they seem things. But then I always try to remind myself that these researchers, these publications, they've been rigorous peer review and so on. So by the time you read it, it's a product that's, you know, and so you can't really compare yourself or judge your work on that basis just yet. Because a lot of the time when you're writing, let's say you're writing a chapter, you still have to send that into your supervisor, your academic supervisor, for them to look at it. You may send it to another colleague, you might just take your time, maybe a few days after, and read it over, and then you kind of get a different perspective on it. So I try not, for me it's not about perfection. I've always, the way I've come through is kind of like get the minimum viable product, and then you upgrade it from there. Once you have something that's workable, once you have a theory, you know, once you have the analytical framework that can work, you kind of have that, and then you know, it's only up from there. So for me, it's not a search for perfection, really. It's a search for something that's applicable and that's viable and that can stand up to scrutiny.
But as you were mentioning, creating that work and it being an iterative process, how did you measure your progress as you went along? Because for you it was five years, for me it's 3.5, 4 years, and sometimes you set deadlines for yourself, and then some days you spend just reading 30 papers, and then at the end of the week you're like,
well, what did I do?
What did I do?
Yeah. Sometimes what I did, I took it very basic. I would do like a word count progress. Very simple, because my limit was 80,000.
Okay.
And so if I could add up 5,000 words a week, or maybe a couple thousand words a week, in the end, I didn't actually keep all those words, but you always felt like you were ticking forward. So for me, that was a very basic step, just looking at the word count. I would also do simple things like I had a list of articles that I wanted to read, and then another list that you tick off when you finish reading them. So although, you know, you may not have gotten anything that you want to use concretely in your research, but you can say, okay, well, I read this paper, and you tick it off and so on. But in terms of the deadlines, I try to make my deadlines not flexible at all. I try to kind of set it with my supervisors. So when I set a deadline for myself personally, that was mostly after, you know, kind of speak with my supervisor. So if we decide that we want to reach X, Y by a certain date, that's when I try to stick, because I'm not the most disciplined individual, so I kind of need that pressure. And
likewise,
in a situation like at UWI, where you know the time of your supervisors is very scarce, so when they tell you to submit something on a particular date, or you've agreed on a particular date, chances are if you don't meet that date, by the time you get it to them, they've already moved on to another student they're supervising. And in my case, when my supervisor, my main supervisor, was actually in Mr. Arthur Lewis Institute, they do a lot of external research, and they get a lot of grants to do research to the CDB and other places, and so they always have projects doing.
So if you didn't meet his deadlines,
exactly.
that was it for you.
And in some instances, it happened like that, where I submitted it maybe a week or two after, and he's like, well, you know, I'm in this CDB thing now, and I can't really focus on you. So then it kind of pushes back my progress. So it kind of made me know, so listen, I need to keep these deadlines firm and to move with it, because you know the difficulty in terms of getting the time.
And feedback. That's one of the challenges that I face in terms of getting feedback in a timely manner, because a lot of times you have the motivation to work on a project, on a section of your work, and getting that feedback is critical moving forward. And sometimes if it goes too long before you get that, you onto something else, and to get the fire to go back to that is just like,
I mean, for me too, that's kind of what prolonged my research, because I would do a chapter and I would say, okay, well, I'm going to submit it today, and sometimes I would take like a month to get back feedback on that. And what are you doing in that month? You're just losing motivation. You're reading,
and then when you read, you're going on this rabbit hole, and it's
then you start questioning questioning the original work that you submit, and you're like, is this even any good? Should I go in a different direction? So for me, I always wanted my feedback to be quick, and I think that's what we're kind of lacking. I thought it was mostly in our setting in the Caribbean, but it seems like if you have a similar challenge.
Same thing. Yeah. Like some supervisors are so busy that you won't hear from them that often. So I think it's a common thing among PhD students and researchers that getting feedback, losing that momentum. Sometimes you know you go into that dip, and I was wondering if you have any tips on how to get out of that slump when, man, I don't want to do this, I don't know if I could finish this, I just probably hate my supervisor at this point.
Me, I'm very basic again. Whenever I feel like I'm in a rut, I'm like, I'm losing my motivation, and so I put away the laptop, I put away and I put out a pen and a paper, I put out a notepad, and you wouldn't believe it, but most of my PhD, all 80,000 words were written, most of it were written and then typed. Because I always flow better when I write. So whenever I'm stuck, I say, listen, put away the laptop, I would get the paper printed out, hard copy, and I would start writing on my thoughts and so on. And eventually, even when I was in the archives doing research, I didn't even, when I came out of it, I had piles and piles of notes and so on, because I found that that's how I was more creative. And it kind of made me feel more engaged and a part of the work.
Yes. And you see how it's flowing. And
so I did most of that. So that's how I kind of, got out of the rut. I also took breaks.
Okay.
So like every now and again I would say, listen, I'm not doing no work for like a couple of days. I would pull out a non-academic book, like a fiction, and I would read a story for a couple of days, maybe a week, and then I would get back into it. But for me, I worked full time as well most of the time when I was doing my PhD, so that proved to be difficult. So what helped me? What helped me was the structure, because I had to be at work for 9 a.m. every morning. And you come home. I come home at like 6. I sleep, take a nap, wake up around 10. Then I go to the postgrad, so our reading room area down there, and I would write until about 4. Come home, sleep again, and so I had a process, and then I go out to work.
Yeah, so that took props to you, because I'm full-time PhD, no working, and I'm just like something. They say if you engage yourself somewhat more with other things, you tend to be a bit more productive, because for sure, look, I have to get this done in this small, short period of time. So I think maybe that works in your favor. I feel like recently it has been helping me, because I'm doing a lot more stuff on this side in addition to my PhD, so it has been kind of making sure I make the most of those hours that I have dedicated to that.
That kind of having other things to do kind of gives you a mental break from focusing on PhD all the time. So I would be at work, I was finance manager of a company, so all day I would be paying bills, figuring out, juggling money, making sure our suppliers in China is paying and so on. So by the time I get home, I haven't thought about my PhD all day. So when I get home, it's kind of like a fresh perspective on it, so I would jump back into that and just put aside my work. Whereas if I was home all day just trying to write and so on, it wouldn't be for me. That flashpoint in terms of getting out some work wouldn't be the same. So.
Would you advise someone to try and get some work experience while doing a PhD, maybe an internship or placement or something? Do you think it adds to your PhD in any way?
I think it does. For me, I've moved from job to job to job, and a lot of it was based on one, the research that I was doing, but also the other work that I was doing. So at the same time, you almost feel like you don't want to be a student forever. And we have a thing in the Caribbean where you're overqualified and you can't find a job because of that. So I needed to make sure that I was marketable still. So I think that's important. So I did an internship with CIBC for 6 months while I was doing my PhD. Then I moved on to a full-time position as finance manager of a company in Barbados. And then after that, I abruptly quit that job and I got another internship at Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, which I did for a couple of months, maybe 3-4 months, and then after that I came back to St. Vincent. But I say all that to say, I think it's important to have that, especially in my field where you're doing economics, finance. That's where I am. And if you kind of come out without that work experience,
people are gonna look at you like, you think you just come here with your doctorate, you don't know how the working world works.
And then even so too, after investing so much time, effort, and in many cases finances into your education, it's difficult to come back and accept that you're not going to be paid for your qualification. That experience kind of helps to bridge that divide or bridge that gap. So when you finish now, you're like, okay, well, they might be like, but you're so qualified, but then you can say, okay, but I'm also experienced as well, and we have done these other things.
I definitely agree with you, and it's one of the things that I myself, because like you, I just went undergrad, master's, PhD, and a lot of people sometimes they're like, oh, but you have no work experience, and you just worry that when you finish, people are not going to understand that the PhD, not because it's academic, it means you don't have any skills. You develop so many skills, project management, time management, research skills. And so what is the benefit you would say your PhD added to you as a professional?
as a professional, I think it added a lot. You spoke about the time management skills, you spoke about the discipline, you spoke about the research skills, spending hours and days in the archives looking through work, writing, and I think that's something that we don't value enough in the profession, writing. Even I had to go and revamp all of my Microsoft Word, my Microsoft skills. I had to go and relearn, a range of Excel skills, a range of PowerPoint skills, like all of those skills that you use day to day, because when you're doing this,
when you're doing present
constantly, you have to present, properly. You have to make sure you have the mannerisms. You have to make sure you can present and all of that. In addition to that, too, I think for me, it kind of showed me personally that what I could add. It kind of helped me to kind of zone in on the skills that I have and what I could add to a particular environment when I go into it. So when I walk into, for example, when I walk into the place that I currently work now, I immediately saw gaps that I knew based on my skill set that I could plug. Yeah. And I hadn't had that experience when I was doing my master's, for example. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of that sort of, you kind of say, okay, well, I've done this before, I can do this, and because you're so wide now, you can spot gaps, you can spot things that are missing, you can spot deficiencies, you can kind of pull apart an environment, a work environment, a professional setting, and almost kind of create a conceptual or theoretical framework in your mind as to, okay, this isn't working because there's something missing here, there's a gap here, and so on. Your analytical skills improve so much, you get so many other different skills with it. So I think for me, that has helped, and for me too, curiosity. My curiosity, yes, I'm always chasing a lead, I'm always chasing something, because what I do now is I'm a finance analyst, and my job is to kind of find ways to save where I work money and to be more efficient financially. So when I look at things like that, it's really tailored to us. I kind of zone in and say, yeah, but we can do this better, we can come up with something, and so I think for me, the curiosity that comes with having to kind of chase up every lead when you're doing a PhD, it helps you so much in the professional environment.
And developing strategies. I think because we always have to think, well, how does this tie in, how does this work? And from that strategist perspective and analyst perspective, it really helps and prepares you for that. But you mentioned one thing, writing, and you talk about Microsoft Word. And one of the things that I use Word a lot, but the rigidity in Word sometimes stops me, and I feel like I have writer's block sometimes. So like you pointed out, most times I just go back to a notebook. Do you have any tips for how you overcame writer's block?
For me, most times if you see back, if you go to my Instagram and so back in my PhD days, she would almost, I'm not advocating, you would almost say about a glass, a Johnny Walker next to me, a glass of scotch or whiskey there, because I like to write in that sort of relaxed, and in the relaxed environment, one. And for me too, whenever I felt writer's block, I would kind of like do something physical, take a jog, come back. And I believe in like mixing everything. Like sometimes I would go out and just go to a fete, go to a party, and then I would come back home 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's like, yeah, bro, and I'm like, yeah, I can do some work,
Yeah, because sometimes you just need that change of scenery.
Yeah, so those kind of things really help me. And I think too, whenever you feel like you're the rigor, like I said, I draw diagrams. I think that helps. I had my theoretical framework drawn out. I would draw lines here. I even had like a whiteboard where I would write out things until you watch on detective novels where they have things linking here and so on and so on. I had one of those.
Detective
When I look up there and I say, okay, this is where the idea is going, this is where I want it to go. So all those sort of things help me, and I think having a good support system as well, family, friends, being able to, traverse those paths and kind of have them intersect, that's important as well, because another thing that we don't mention is the loneliness that comes with the PhD, and the loneliness is what contributes a lot of the time to the writer's block and so on, because you feel so separated from everybody else in the world and the people that matter to you.
Exactly, and then you have that case where a lot of your friends, people you went to school with, they're already off, starting their life.
Walking, married, driving a nice car.
And you just say like, oh, I'm the broke PhD student. You want to go out? Should we split the bill? I don't know.
Those struggle times.
But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. I would ask, if somebody's struggling maybe with getting support, would you suggest that they seek external help? How should they go about doing that?
Well, for me, I think it's a difficult thing because as academics, we can take things personally, right? And you have to be careful with that in terms of your academic supervisor. So if your supervisor isn't getting, because even for me, just to say, parenthetically, I had to change my supervisor my first year. Me and my supervisor, we couldn't get to that. I couldn't meet with him and so on. And I had to write to the university and ask for a change, which was difficult to do because our egos and so. But I always tell them, I always tell people, if you feel like you're not getting what you need from your supervisor, I mean, frankly, I would kind of have a conversation with them first. Don't let it be a situation where you find that you're getting external help. For example, if you want to have a conversation with your supervisor and say, okay, well, I don't feel like I'm getting the support, would it be okay if I talk to X, Y, and so on? And sometimes you find that they won't have a problem with it. If you go and do it behind their back and it becomes a talking faculty, that, you know, this person coming to me, it becomes an issue. So I would say do that, and I know that people ask, sometimes go and try to get external PhD writing thing. I'm kind of skeptical about that, to be honest. They go on and say well, because you know your work. Nobody knows your work more than you. And when we go to like these international, you know, people who are in the US and so on, who advertise that they have these PhD writing skills and so on, some of it is useful, but some of it also is very tailored to their context. And for us in the Caribbean, it's better to kind of keep. And
I think always having that authenticity in your work. It is your work. Let your voice be heard. Like you put it in there, and just going back over it, writing it today, going back 2 weeks, a week, whenever, you will change it. Your writing style will change from year one to the end, and you'll be like, boy, I write that. Let me just polish that up a little bit. So just kind of trust yourself. But to end, what would be your advice to anybody like me, still in the, maybe we call it the darkness, I don't know.
You should be seeing the light now at the end of the tunnel, man.
Soon. I could see the light, but I'm like trotting through. I'm like, can I get there? What would your advice to be to anybody close to the end, in the middle, and then for new PhD?
Well, close to the end, I would say persevere. I think you need to set aggressive timelines for yourself. Try to kind of finish. You know, set timelines for yourself and make sure that you kind of have everything on paper. This is the point in time, if you're close to the end, that you have to have everything written down, have everything that you can put together. You have a finished project that you could kind of maybe then go and, when in collaboration with your supervisor, edit and so on, but you have to finish. You have to get close to the word limit, you have to finish, you have to think it. And at this point in time, for those almost finished, you need to understand it's not going to be perfect, and you might need to take out some things. So for example, when I was finishing up in my last month or so, I had an additional chapter that my supervisors wanted me to tackle. And I said, no, that's postdoc, you know. We had an argument about it, and I said, that's postdoc, because we're at the point now where we need to be tidying up and we need to be finishing. And if you keep adding things, we're never going to finish. For those people in the middle, I would say, keep pushing. I mean, you have to set targets, you have to work with your supervisors, you have to be curious, you have to explore, you have to make the time. You have to write it down. Don't think that you're not going to, don't think that you're going to remember it and so on. You need to write it down and explore the ideas. Even for those, especially in the middle, if you feel like it might not pan out, still explore it. Even if you do it on a separate sheet of paper or something, still explore the idea, because you might find that even though the idea doesn't pan out, some of the methodology might help you somewhere else and so on. So, work through those ideas and see even if you end up not using them. That's important as well. For those who just started, if you're very, very early in the process, make sure this is something that you want to do. I mean, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. I mean, there's a lot of debate over what the right reasons are, but make sure for you personally, this is something that you want to commit to. And if you are, then keep plowing ahead and keep pushing, and just understand that it's not going to be an overnight process. It's going to get lonely at times, and you kind of have to decide what you want and reach for it.
Thank you. So you're here, write it down, follow through with the idea, and make sure you have the passion. Yeah. So thank you for watching this video. I'm gonna have a couple more videos with Dalano talking about application process in the Caribbean, and you can check those out. You can also check out Dalano's podcast. He has a podcast called Into the Bar.
Yes, a lawyer and a policy analyst walking to the bar. I'm the policy analyst.
And he does that with his colleague, and it's really informative, putting his PhD to use, discussing topical issues in the Caribbean region. So I'll link that down below and you can check it out. Also subscribe so you don't miss them.